And welcome to the call today. Today we've got a very interesting topic. We're talking to Simon Mossman about how to get PR and use it to carve out your business niche. Now, PR is one of those big black boxes that most people think about, they don't really understand. But Simon comes from a background of 23 years in the media. He's been in the news, he's been a reporter, he's been in PR for the last 5 years. And I'd like to welcome Simon to the call today. So, welcome, Simon.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me.
So tell us a bit about your background.
Yeah, so I spent in a previous life, I was a news journalist in the UK and in Australia, short of covering a war or hacking phones, covered just about every base that I wanted to in the media. And about 5 years ago, jumped into PR. But prior to that, it was a lot of really good stories, covering Olympics campaigns, chasing celebrities down the street, doing a bit of the paparazzi work, and on quiet weekends in one agency I worked at in the UK, if the news diary was really quiet, would be tasked with going to follow the royal fox hunts, looking for the royal scoop for the Sunday press. So it was a really, really exciting career. Before the paparazzi and the Fleet Street fueling the Fleet Street machine, it was very much politics, crime and justice rounds, that kind of thing.
Right.
But really, on very quiet news days, the editor or news editor would be sending us a whole stack of press releases to sift through. And this was before the internet, in some cases before text messages and mobile phones.
Right.
So we got press releases virtually in the post. There was next to no email at that point in time, or by fax. If anybody's hands up, those who still have a fax machine.
So let's just start with basics. PR, what does it stand for?
Well, in the shorter sense, it's public relations, relating to your publics.
Okay.
It has broadened out so in the simplest sense, a long time ago, it was about getting publicity or promotion for your business.
Yep.
By and large, by pitching media to get a third-party bit of coverage or endorsement for your event, for your product.
Right.
If you were selling or wanting to share or promote your sort of expertise, if you were a thought leader, as they say.
So it's really like the distinction between paying for advertising and getting press or getting some sort of mind share through having an interesting story.
Absolutely. So in a broad sense, there are three pillars to that triangle in terms of the media that you can get and the marketing activities you could do. Advertising, paid for, obviously. That's your paid media.
Mm-hmm.
And advertising, if you can afford it, fantastic. There's probably still a place and time to do some advertising, but this day it's no longer that $500,000 billboard above Federation Square or Times Square or Piccadilly Circus.
Right.
It is banners on Facebook. It is banners on websites.
Things like
AdWords, all of the above.
Right.
But, why advertise when you can, why pay for advertising when you can be publicizing?
True.
And not only that, in getting publicity, seeking that publicity from and with a third-party outlet, a third party in a sense, there is greater credibility.
Yes, because I was going to say, having an endorsement of a magazine, so they're actually writing a story about a particular company, carries a lot more credibility than an ad.
Yeah, and if you think about it in a very visual sense, advertising is simply saying, look how good we are, look at what we've got to sell.
Right.
Whereas public relations and that third-party endorsement route is getting those endorsements and endorsees saying, look how good they are, look how good their product is.
Okay.
So you'd be, pitching again in the traditional sense, a press release or a press kit with fact sheets and backgrounds about the company, the product, and so on. But that was still earned media.
Right.
So you still had to earn something, and your product, your service, your point of view, whatever it had to be, whatever it was, had to still be compelling, new, interesting, relevant. Not just for the media, not just for the journalists who were pitching, but of course your audience beyond there. What is the media? The media, in a basic sense, is still just a prism. It's still just a conduit to your true audience. Who are you really trying to talk to? In many respects. So you've got the advertising, paid media.
Yes.
You have media relations, which is earned media.
Mm-hmm.
But the what I call the new age PR imperative, the new media paradigm, is the PR through publishing capabilities that every business owner and every brand has today. It's owned media.
Right. Okay. So that sort of leads to my next question, because you have a very interesting brand or name, which is New Media Evangelist, or the NME. So who is the NME?
Well, the enemy, in the simplest sense, is me. I came up with it. It was just it's a bit of an idea to, I suppose, brand myself in one sense.
Yeah.
my brand is still me, Simon Mossman, but you've got this digital opportunity these days. You know, we have had the internet for 10, 12, 15 years or more.
Yes.
It's only really in the turn of this century and this millennium that the internet has really come to provide a major opportunity for businesses and individuals. For me, it gives me an opportunity. The enemy is, in the simplest sense, my blog. Okay. But over time, I would like to think I could build it up to become my digital platform where I am, if you like, I suppose, sharing my services, working with businesses that are delivering my services or products and capabilities with my internet domain as my platform, as my springboard. So that becomes, if you like, my platform for my business.
Right.
NME was an idea. I've had some interesting feedback on the word evangelist. It scares some people off. You know, are you a cult? Are you this? Are you that? But really, look, I came up with I was wordsmithing ideas for a brand title, a blog title, a blog masthead name. And I knew it had to be around new media, NM something, but I didn't want to be NME expert. Everybody seems to be an expert out there these days. Yeah. I've always maintained that the definition of an expert is somebody who's made all the mistakes there are to make in the book. Right. I'm not one of those. I'm a student of life, if you like.
And look, I like the concept because I know really what you suggested about the internet has changed the way we do PR. Because in the old days, you know, when we started working with business owners, one of the ways we get PR is you'd actually have to get a press release written, and you'd have to know somebody. And it was about making sure you had a relationship with the editor, or someone had an in and they could get you press, or you could pay some money, or there was some angle. What's really occurred, I suppose, with the internet is it's just opened the door and reduced that barrier to entry, hasn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. So if I go back to the year 2000, and if you can't tell from the accent, I come from the motherland, one of. But on landing in Australia, the year 2000, January 2000.
You weren't a convict, were you?
I wasn't, no. I don't want to mention that C word. I get cop enough flack for it. But I was very fortunate to land my first job with the National Newswire, Australian Associated Press, which was just set up an internet or digital news desk, and it was a pioneer in this field. Yeah. So humbled to be one of, if you like, I suppose the journalist, one of the first internet journalists. And sub-editors in Australia. But even then, our subscribers were no longer just the traditional media outlets like the major newspaper publishers and the metros or the TVs or the radio stations. Our subscribers, the new subscribers, even at that time, were big and small corporations. We were having, if it's okay to name some names or brands, but you know, your Telstra Big Ponds of the world, they were quickly realizing that they could become a publisher.
Right.
Then there were smaller operations. One of the other websites was the early version, if you like, of, say, a Mamma Mia, one of these sort of mummy blog, mummypreneur type sites. And this site was called She Said. I'm not sure if it's still around. I haven't actually Googled it for a while. Yeah. But these were new subscribers who were realizing, businesses that were realizing that they could get into publishing and basically start to get their message to market much more directly than going through the traditional filter or prism.
So it used to be there was sort of 3 or 4 television stations, there were 3 or 4 major newspapers, and there were half a dozen magazines.
Absolutely.
And that was it. Yeah. So really everyone was vying for space within those places. What you've suggested is the doors opened wide, and now there are so many more channels, there are so many more really publications that people can access. Yeah. So the world has really changed on its head. On its head.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's just opened up a virtually infinite number of opportunities for businesses to get their message out there, and not just get their message out there, but control their messaging in a better way.
Right.
So probably over the course of the next half hour or so, we're going to be just looking at the contrast between old media and new. Sure. It is going to be the old traditional media. You know, they're not all lagging behind. A lot of them have gotten onto the digital imperative, if you like. We do have theage.com.au online. Yes. We do have all these new media titles like Smart Company and Business Spectator. Yes. And then you've got your trade titles or other old school print or offline media, which if you can get a magazine, they probably do have that website and have had for some time now. Right. So there is still that digital opportunity there. Okay. But the contrast will be what you can do on your own media, your own digital ecosystem, what you can build over time. You don't build it overnight. You don't get a website that's brimming with information and content, plus your blog, plus all your social channels, plus all the other opportunities and platforms and channels that you could conceivably be on. You're not going to do it all overnight. but the opportunity is here and now. It has been here for a few years already.
Yeah.
There are those digital natives that have gone ahead before most of us to trial and error a lot of it. But now it will be a point in the opportunity for small businesses, and certainly your listeners will be, okay, I do want to start doing this. I still want to manage and get going with some sort of PR. How can I do it?
So I see two sides to this, and for the small business owner, one side is to create their own channel, which you've just mentioned, so they can actually create their own publication very, very easily and very affordably. And the other side is that there's so many publications that they can actually get their story into.
Yes.
So either way, it sort of gets the same outcome, which is getting exposure without having to actually pay an advertising fee and having the credibility of those publications as well.
Yeah.
Excellent. So let's start off with really what's the state of PR in the 21st century?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just flicking through here. Please ignore some of these.
Well, let's start with this one.
Slides. Yeah, I just really wanted to put out a quick straw poll out there for those who've joined us this morning. Please do ping us a question in the question box or question field.
Yep.
I really just wanted to put that one line out there. What is the biggest challenge for your listeners today in terms of their marketing or PR activity?
Great. So look, anyone who has a question, the question box is in the GoToMeeting control panel. Please type those in as we go, and we'll attempt to answer those as we go through the day. But really, the questions you've thrown up here, the biggest challenge for marketing right now, or PR, is content. I agree with that one. I think the majority of people I speak to, they go, it's a great idea, but what do I write? So there is that whole mindset around, well, what is content? Where do I get it from? Do I pay someone to write it for me? Can I write it myself? Does it need to be written? I mean, there's so many different ways. So we'll talk a bit about that today.
Yes, we certainly will. Yeah.
Okay. And developing a strategy. So really understanding, because this is the other issue, is there's just so many channels.
Yes. And
I watch a small business owner who just really goes glazed over when we talk about, social media, SlideShare, PR wire, all these things just become so overwhelming. And I don't think it has to be. I think it's about identifying which are the best channels. Would that be fair to say?
Very simply, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And you sort of put it as point number 3, identifying your audience, which I would consider probably to be the most important point. Before we start doing anything with PR, the question should be who are we trying to chase?
Yeah.
Yep.
You need to know who's who in the zoo before you start customizing your content.
Absolutely. And you read my mind about measurement, because one of the things I've done as a coach with all the clients I work with is we talk about, if you can't measure it, then don't do it, which is pretty hard when it comes to things like brand recognition.
Yes.
So maybe if we can touch on that as well.
Yep. Absolutely.
And the last one was execution, and I agree with this one as well.
Which summarises it all. Absolutely. Yeah. It is just that, I've got no time. I mean, small businesses, and I'm one myself.
Yeah.
I appreciate that budgets can be very lean at most times.
Yeah.
You really need to be very judicious about where you spend.
Yeah.
Your turnover, your revenue, your profit, whatever it may be.
Right.
So the implementation can often be quite overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be.
Okay.
I mean, there is so much digital white noise out there now. You need to just stop, take stock, and work out first of all how you are actually going to achieve cut through.
Okay. So let's move into this, like your interpretation of what's happening now, because obviously the PR market has changed quite dramatically over the years.
Yes.
We're in the 21st century. You've already sort of explained how there is this opportunity for people to capitalize on the new changes. Let's talk about what they are. So.
Yeah, so again, PR, old school, 1990s and the 80s, it was that emphasis on pitching journalists and beyond prior to that. Turn of the century with the internet, and certainly with the advent of social media as well, that has given businesses, brands and individuals a direct route to market. They could circumnavigate the traditional media and go straight to market with their message.
Right.
The last few years, PR has become much more of a DIY activity as well. That's probably another of the big differences.
Right.
The tools out there have empowered people to do it themselves. There's no need to go and necessarily get that expensive retainer, that 10, 20 grand a month, if you can afford that kind of money, to put an agency on retainer and be delivering some level of service for that. But then anything else over and above is still over and above. Right. You've got the tools out there that are free or are next to free, and it does very much empower you to look after your own and do your own PR in a much more meaningful way.
Right.
And when your audience, which helps determine the content as well, they're screaming out for useful, valuable, informative content that helps solve their problems rather than just pushing out your marketing message again, because it's not an excuse or just a quick route. Now you can go straight to your website and push out your marketing messages. Yes, that's in a simple sense what it's there for. But the whole idea of circumnavigating the traditional media, you still have to be careful about just pushing out endless messages, marketing messages,
Right.
because it may put people off.
Okay.
But what can you do? What can you share? Content, as you picked up a moment ago.
Yeah.
Content has become this new currency.
Mm.
It is the primary currency. Market your business, market your brand. People are screaming for real, valid, useful content. Not just the any old stuff out there. There is a heck of a lot of stuff out there. No two ways about it. Yeah. It is important to take stock before you join the mob. Take stock, work out what it is that you think will achieve cut through.
Absolutely.
Secondly, in working out your audience as well, it won't necessarily be you have to reach everybody, because not everybody will be interested in your company. You may only need in your neighborhood, or for your business or your industry or your niche, you may only need a few thousand people on your database, or you may only have a few thousand customers of the same type. And yes, you'll be growing a business, so there will be some new additions to that. But are you really trying to conquer all 7.5, 8 billion people in the world with your message? I don't think so.
Okay, so really, like, content, it can be very, I've seen this time and time again. People are building their websites, and web developer goes, "Yep, no problem. I can create a website for you. Give me content." Yeah. And the poor business owner is sitting there looking like, "Okay, what do you want? Yeah, I need some stories. I need some this. I need something about your product. I need something about the benefits." And so they're really stretched. Now, the interesting thing with content, and I suppose I've learned this through my own experimentation, is it's easier to create content if you know who you're talking to. Yes. Isn't it? Yes. And so when people say we need content, the first thing they really should be saying is, who is your target market?
Yes.
Yeah. And then the next thing is, what are they interested in?
Yeah.
And then we can write content. So I think, the deal for small businesses, startup, service-based businesses, how can they be harnessing this power of PR? Because you sort of alluded to it, and it can be overwhelming.
Well, the first question really has to be, again, why?
Yeah.
Why would you be doing this in the first place?
Okay.
The how will come along later on, but you really need to work out, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to grow the brand?
Yeah.
Are you trying to, and if I just zip forward here, are you trying to build your business, attract more business, attract more custom?
Yeah.
Are you trying to build a community? Are you trying to reach out to a specific type of person out there in your community? What is your community? How is it defined geographically? Are you in a specific council municipality?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you in a broader regional area? Are you rural? Are you suburban? Are you metro, CBD? Are you coastal? Are you inland?
Yeah.
Depends where your business is and what you're trying to do.
Right.
Now, of course, again, the internet has just given a gateway to the world for even the most rural, remote, smallest, most undigital of businesses.
Yeah.
How can they also be thinking about leveraging that as well? So before you work out the how, you do need to answer the question why. Why are you wanting to do this?
Okay.
Now, usually it's obviously to grow the business in a simple sense. It is to build your brand. This day and age, it's becoming more of a service economy. We're seeing what's happening with the large manufacturers.
I've heard an interesting saying, and people used to talk about the 4 Ps of marketing, price, place, promotion, and product. And it was all about making sure you have the right product, the right price in the right place, and then you advertised it. And with what's really happened with the internet, we've moved to the 4 Cs of marketing, which is all about content, so information, because I think the biggest thing for me, being sort of the last of the baby boomers, is all of a sudden we're in a world where information is everywhere. Yeah. And if you have a question, it doesn't matter what that question is, you can have the answer within 3 seconds. Yeah. That's astounding.
Yes.
Because when I was younger, you'd need to find an expert, and you'd need to actually get some credibility, or you'd look in an encyclopedia, and that was as far as you could go, or a library.
Yeah.
These days you have infinite opinions being thrown at you left, right, and centre. So this content is really sort of the core of what we're talking about.
Yes.
The second thing they talk about is context.
Yeah.
And context, from my perspective, is timing.
Yes.
It's all about when people ask a question, do you have the relevant information that answers that question right at that point in time? Yeah. Now, the third one, and this is where I suppose the social media comes into it, is the community. And people like to hear other people's opinions. And everyone gets overwhelmed by social media, but we had a great metaphor that was brought up in one of our other webinars, which talked about it like it's social, right? You go to a pub or you go to a party, and there's a group of people, and that's what social media is.
Yeah.
So making sure that you've got these communities that you've either plugged into or that you manage. And then the last one is really about communication. And as you sort of alluded to as well, is it's so easy to get the message out there these days through email, through blog posts, through Twitter, through all these different media. And so we really need to be thinking about how do we keep that flow going.
Yeah, yeah. Social media, and I don't want this to become just about social media. It is a buzzword. It is a buzz phrase. No two ways about it. It is a valid activity. It's a valid channel, as much as Channel 7, 9, and 10, and The Age, or Fin Review, or Financial Standard, whatever. But it is just another tool in your communications toolkit, if you like. The part of the problem is a lot of these social media gurus, ninjas, and experts out there who are telling businesses that they need to have that Facebook company page or group or fan page, whatever. They just get them onto social, and then the classic question is, well, what do I post? As you said a moment ago.
Back to content.
It is back to content, absolutely. A content strategy always should come before any social media strategy.
Right.
You don't do social, you be social.
Right, okay.
And that's the critical thing. Just to extend that, and again, don't want to dwell on social, but it won't. Your social channels are not just about. It's not just another channel to push out your marketing message. Today, you've got real humans there engaging with you in real time.
Yeah.
You can go and engage with a brand like Stephen Fry or Ashton Kutcher on Twitter direct, and you get a response.
Okay.
10, 20 years ago, no way. You'd have to go through agents if you were pitching something to that person, wardrobe design, makeup, whatever. Today, we're all so much more connected, but there are real people there.
Right.
And we want real conversation. So as much as it sounds like it could be a bit of a heavy time drain, or a difficult activity to service in that respect, you don't have to spend too long, but you do have to be sort of, if there is a conversation there that you're being asked questions on, engage in a genuine way.
Right.
Don't just, social is not just a platform to close a sale.
Gotcha.
I read this brilliant line the other day, and it was in a SlideShare presentation just around that. Social media is not about the closing. It's about the opening.
Right.
Opening a conversation, continuing it.
Okay.
Doesn't mean you need to be on social, your Twitter, your LinkedIn, Pinterest, all day, every day. We're all small businesses. We're all pretty time poor. But a conversation can extend over a couple of days if it's less urgent. Now, I am, continued conversations with some stakeholders over the course of a couple of days.
Right.
There's a time imperative if we're talking about a news story, for example, and we want to work out maybe how to respond on that day.
Okay.
But really, it's about that genuine engagement piece.
Right.
I mean, you're going to go away and run seminars for a day or two. You could be away from Twitter. You could be in the bush running some workshops for your own.
In the bush.
Well, maybe you're up in Shepperton. There's next to no Wi-Fi signal, but you're away from your communication channels.
Yep.
But you come back and you see that some people have retweeted what you said and then asked you a question and inquired about a product or whatever it may be, and you just pick up that conversation again.
Okay.
So it's about that genuine engagement.
So really, like getting back to the whole PR angle, right? Yeah. We're looking for a small business owner. They generally have half a dozen employees. They basically have zero time and zero budget. Where do they start?
Start small.
Let's get specific. Yeah. So start, when you say start small, what does that mean?
Well, look, again, first of all, there is an order of things, as you can appreciate.
Yeah.
You still, again, have to establish,
right.
What are your objectives?
Yep.
What's your aim? Now, I've used the word AIM as an acronym here, which, again, stands for audience, impression, and messaging. So it goes back to, just reinforces that point. You first of all need to know who you're talking to.
Yeah.
The impression, well, of course, you want to be credible, so on and so forth, but then your messaging follows. So work out, first of all, work out your objectives.
Yep.
Why are you doing this in the first place? What you need to be doing, what you need to be achieving. Are you trying to achieve 200,000 unit sales? Whatever the objective is, that's fine.
So not dissimilar to any other marketing strategy, we start with what is our goal?
Yeah.
And then part of that is who is our target market? And what is the image or impression we want to give them? Yeah. And I suppose the last thing would be then to start putting some measurement around that as well.
Yeah, or measurement is a critical part of the whole mix, definitely. But this is what broadly would be the order, the flow that you go
So establish your objectives.
Yep. And then your audience. And look, if you've got one single type of persona out there, stakeholder persona, that's fine. A buyer persona, that's fine. If they're easy to identify.
Yeah.
And keep updating that persona, great. But you may actually be talking to several different types of people. If you're growing a business, you're probably wanting to, attract new business from somewhere else, from left field.
Right.
What does that person look like?
Okay, so you would also bring into that equation people like partners, strategic partners. So
absolutely.
I might have an end user requirement. So, I might be running a photographic studio, and really what I want is families coming through and getting photos taken.
Yeah.
But then I might also have another target market, which is someone else who deals with my same client.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it could be like family daycare centres and places like that.
Absolutely. So it's not just customers.
Right.
We all, they can be forgiven for thinking that it is just about the customers, but there are so many more people in the equation of your business.
Yeah.
It is potential partners, non-competing partners. If you're a photographic studio, have you got a next door graphic designer who can help you sort of package some of the stuff up?
Right.
Are you doing any government work or needing to just do even a bit of small business lobbying the federal small business minister, for example, from time to time, or the opposition? So, are there government stakeholders to be had there? Are they on the political side of the fence or departmental?
Yeah.
If they're political, there's a specific message to go with that. If they're departmental, it's probably more tactical or solution focused. What is it? You've got your suppliers, you've got distributors, you've got wholesalers, those kinds of partners.
Okay, so really when you say audience audit, we're really trying to analyse who is our audiences, or in multiple.
Yeah.
And then I suppose the next thing is really, okay, so what are they interested in?
Where do they hang out? What are they interested in? Absolutely. What do they want to hear?
Where do they hang out?
No, that's absolutely fine. What do they want to hear from you?
Yeah.
And obviously, the government stakeholder will have a very different need if you get an audience with him or her from what your suppliers need and what your partners on the ground need. If you're a small manufacturing business or a manufacturing services business, who are the manufacturers in that supply chain?
Okay.
Who's using your product at the end of the line up in the quarry up in Moranbah, Queensland, or in the Pilbara?
Okay.
Where do they hang out?
So really what you're telling us, Simon, is this is no different to any other marketing strategy. The questions are exactly the same.
Yep.
And I suppose the only real difference is that instead of paying for the advertising, we're hoping that we can get someone to promote. So I suppose the story has to be different, doesn't it?
Look, the story does have to be different, but just to close off the points of where they're hanging out, where are they, what are they reading? Now, 10, 20 years ago, they could have been reading Manufacturing Weekly or Engineers Australia.
Yeah.
Today, those magazines, those titles, trade titles and mainstream, they are online.
Yes.
So where do they hang out? Are they just reading the smart companies of the world? Or are they actually on SlideShare because they actually have a vested interest? Are they on LinkedIn because they just have that sort of white collar imperative to their business, their brand, their activity, whatever they may be doing, even small suburban accountancy.
So then within those SlideShare and LinkedIn, then we've also got the communities.
Absolutely. It's fair to say almost every app, tool, channel, platform out there is all but a social network in its own right. Take SlideShare for example, and I found this with personal experience to my great benefit. SlideShare is, for those that may not have come across this before, it's for presenting your PowerPoint slides, or not so much PowerPoint presentations, I should say, but sort of PDFs. You can also get videos up there. You can also get your infographics, which is another modern sort of visual communication tool that's gaining great currency these days. But in a simple sense, SlideShare, by the name, it's your presentation slides. It happens to be owned by LinkedIn, one of the biggest and fastest growing professional social networks out there. But the fact is, you can build an entire community around just your SlideShare account, in effect, your brand as it exists on SlideShare.
Right.
And if that's where your audience is, and that's the type of content and delivery that they prefer to get your content in, 5, 10, 15 well-crafted, well-structured visual slides, and they don't read the media titles. They don't no longer buy a newspaper or a magazine off the shelf at the newsagent anymore.
So can I ask a silly question? How do you know?
It is a good question. You have to go out and explore. No two ways about it. There is so much out there.
Right.
You do have to go out and explore. Ask your stakeholders.
Right.
Once you've got that database sort of in development, once you've got your email list, do a survey monkey. Ask them, put a couple of polls out there, engage with them. If you're on social, ask them, what do they read? What do they like? What do they want to hear from you? What can they use? What can you do that will solve their headache?
Okay. So really the answer to which media to use really comes down to, really depends on what they're reading.
Yeah, which goes back to the audience. Where are they hanging out?
Yeah.
Now again, and the nice thing as well about content is that it can be repurposed.
Okay.
So take in a simple sense, a piece of video marketing, a video that you've done for, you put a 3-minute YouTube video up on your YouTube. It's a bit of a how-to advice article. Well, what you can do is pull down the text transcript.
Yeah.
And you've got a ready-made blog post or a couple of blog posts. So you're starting to develop a bit of your own proprietary content. Pull down the audio track as well and turn it into a podcast to put it up on iTunes, because some of your audience could be there. They just may be mad Apple, iTunes, iPhone music junkies who do happen to like audio books. and
Right.
some other informative content, podcasts and the like out there.
Okay.
It may actually give you enough momentum to go in the podcasting route. I'm not an expert on podcasting, but that's another medium that's really been gaining traction in the last few years.
So really, once we've sort of got our marketing strategy in place and we've now got some content flowing, this now gives us, let's call it fodder, to start considering how we get PR. Because I suppose what I'm a bit confused about now is what is PR in the new world? Because really what we've talked about is no different to normal marketing strategies 101. But PR in my mind is about getting airplay for something that's not just pitching my product anymore.
And it's getting airplay that you can guarantee getting airplay. You can have and host your own podcast channel or your own YouTube channel on your website, and you're going to build your audience over time. You know, let's get realistic here. You're not going to get 200,000 subscribers, listeners, followers, viewers, whatever, overnight. It does need to be built up over time.
Yeah.
And there are steps in that process. It could be over a couple of years. But
Yes.
which business these days is microwave or slow bake? I mean,
Yeah.
You have to think about, are you trying to build up a business overnight? Well, how fast are you doing it too fast?
Yeah.
Most long-term businesses, they go for that slow bake approach, if you like. It is, you do have to allow time, especially this day and age when there is, again, so much content out there, so much digital white noise hiding behind Google. You can find anything you want, and Google is usually the first port of call for it.
So this is an interesting point, and I think you did bring it up prior to our webinar today about Google and the search engine and how it impacts the PR world. Because really, I suppose in the old day, PR was about knowing somebody who knew the editor who could get your story under their nose at the right time and maybe have a relationship to sort of encourage them to publish that.
Yeah.
Either that or I think you mentioned earlier as well about piggybacking on news, which is quite relevant, which is saying, okay, what's the news of the moment and how can we write a story that actually gives a deeper view to that publication?
Yeah.
So how does Google impact this? How does someone in business use Google as a tool? Well, let's call it search engine. In Australia, it's majority Google.
Yeah.
But what do we have to do? So the business owner does what?
Well, the business in first step may simply be, okay, I need a media release template. I want to start pitching something to a media type that I like.
Yeah.
I've tried to get the journalist or the editor on the phone, and they're just a bit difficult to get hold of. So I need to just pitch in a story. I've never written a media release in my life.
Right.
I'll go and Google a media release template.
Okay. So really, once we've identified our target market where they're hanging around, the next thing is we need to get some media release formatted content.
Yeah.
So we can download a template by just Googling media release template and just filling in the gaps.
Yeah.
So now we have this media release now.
Keep in mind as well, we've still got one foot in the past here as well.
Yeah.
We're talking about sort of that old school media outreach, even though it's digital media. You could be pitching purely just to one of the digital titles, like, again, Smart Company or Business Spectator here in Australia.
Right.
There are untold channels in the States and Europe, of course, and elsewhere.
Yes.
So the media release itself is that old school tool, but it is still good. You can still have that keyword optimized, and I don't want to bamboozle the listeners with SEO and keywords and whatnot. Mm-hmm. That's another dark art in itself.
Yeah.
But you could be having your own press release on your website. You could turn your own press release around into a blog post. So it's rather than sort of pitching in a very sort of structured, layered marketing message.
Yeah.
It can be a genuine sort of story structured.
So the nice thing about this press release template is we're really moving away from just pitching product, which I think people become numb to, don't they? They just see so much promotion these days.
They do.
We want to make it a bit more interesting. So we start thinking in terms of the newsworthiness of the angle. Which is really creating valuable content, because I think it's interesting. People don't buy magazines or read newspapers for the ads.
No.
They read them for the stories.
Absolutely.
So really, these small business owners need to at least get a basic skill set in being able to tell a story. And if they can't do that, they can use these templates, or they could contact someone like yourself.
Yeah.
Because in the end, that's what the news channels are going to be interested in.
Yeah.
They're not interested, hey, I've got a really great product and you should promote it for me.
Yeah.
Or let me tell you why you should buy my product, or let me tell you what my clients think about my product, because that's all about me.
So this comes back a bit to doing that audience audit, that step.
Yeah.
What does your audience want? They don't want the marketing message. They don't want the product pitched in a press release necessarily, but they do want a story, or they respond best to a story if you put it in a very story-focused way. And a story could be one of your client case studies.
Mm-hmm.
let your clients help define your business. I mean, that's how clients can work in that respect. They may never know that they're helping in that respect, but it's a story. Storytelling is the oldest form of communication, as well as marketing. People do respond to it. People remember a story. It's emotional. So what is the emotional connection you can draw there within the content based on or determined by and shaped by your audience? So again, who are you talking to? Are you talking to mothers at playgroups and mumpreneurs in the blogosphere? And are you talking to the mums who are dropping their kids off at school before going back home and running a small business off the kitchen counter? Who exactly are you targeting? What do they want? Are they buying Women's Weekly? Are they getting their annual subscription to Women's Weekly still? Or are they reading Mamma Mia or Kidspot or the lifestyle additions to the mainstream? So lifestyle or whatever it is on the Age.
So once we start putting these content pieces together, these press releases, what do we do with them?
Right, before we get to there, we still need to really plan out the content, the schedule.
So explain a bit about that.
Yeah, so content calendars, content plan, work out what it is. Just lay it out. It doesn't have to be a very onerous tool. It could be a simply set up Microsoft Excel spreadsheet that is just even broken down one a month, just to start, just to begin to develop the habit of generating some content, whether you curate it or create it. You can start to plot out what you'll be doing, roughly one a month, where it will go. Across the top, you can have your audiences, who needs to hear this, what will be my keywords, what is the call to action for that audience? Do I want them to tweet this? Do I want them to pick up the phone and then buy the product? Do I want them to forward this on to 20,000 friends, share it on Facebook? What is that call to action? What is the outcome that I want? I want increased referrals to the website. I need to see some numbers there. I'm getting into metrics as well now. But get that plan together. Is that in the new media paradigm, if you like, in terms of that owned media? This is how you can start to just manage that content building and delivery process. So going back to a minute ago, you were talking about sort of media release, people wanting to go on Google, but what do they look for? What are they trying to achieve? Well, again, there is still that media release that they can pitch out there, but that's still going down that old school route. Right. It is about how can I use my content and put it up in a meaningful way on my own digital domains that I already own. Gotcha. And hopefully people have bought their URLs or registered their URLs for the next 10, 15, 25 years. Right. I think the most important thing these days from a general business planning sense is the highest priority is about getting the URL first, not getting the IP or your logo trademarked or whatnot. Right, because once you got it, just having that business registration, because I don't think, and I'm not the IP expert here, but that's not necessarily protection of that brand or that logo. Right. But so, your URL.
I have noticed, like you keep sort of telling us that we need to get the plan right first. Yeah. So it's not just about one press release. It's not just about one customer. It's about understanding what this relationship is going to be over a period of time. Yeah. And what is the theme or the message that we're trying to get out there? Because I suppose the other mistake a lot of people make is they just want a press release and they want it to go in the newspaper tomorrow and they want to get lots of business out of it and they don't want to pay for that because it's free press, right? Yeah.
And there are still, fair to say, there are those businesses, and I had one just a couple of months ago say, how much do we have to pay the journalist to get a story in the Age tomorrow? Yeah. Well, you could come up with $100 million and you still won't get it printed in the Age tomorrow. Yeah. No amount of money will buy that. Forget it. You cannot buy journalists like that.
Anymore?
It's not anymore. Look, it's not, unless you're going to take out the advertising on the opposite page and you buy an advertorial. Right. Yeah, exactly. So there's some sort of pseudo editorial, supposedly third party. Yes. Content there. Really, it's still an advert.
So it's doable, but it's not really practical.
Not really. Again, the contrast here, and it's not to say that the old way of the old world media and old world PR approach is no longer relevant or valid. Yeah. You still need that endorsement. So if you've got a product, and it's going to come back to, again, who you're talking to and what you're actually selling or giving or wanting to share. Yeah. If you're a service-based business, but you don't actually have a product that you've commoditized or IP that you've commoditized, but you do have a lot of commentary, and you could be building your brand as a commentator on, let's say, every time the ABS publishes monthly or quarterly retail stats, what's the state of the Australian retail sector? Okay. Could you be riding the coattails of that? Could you be actually getting out there and sharing a bit of content, a bit of commentary, I should say? So could you then be out of that, also putting your own thoughts into a blog post. Send the blog post to the journalist, or send it in a very visual way. Send the SlideShare link to the journalist.
Okay,
Send an infographic to the journalist, not just an old school press release.
Right. So what you're saying is it's really about getting the right content first that actually is interesting to your target market. So it needs to be emotional driven content of value stories.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Google as a tool. So once I've got this content, how do I get in touch with these journos?
Pick up the phone.
Pick up the phone and
Yep.
call
the journalist. So you'll hopefully have done the due diligence, worked out who the journalist is. If you
Right.
are looking at a trade title, and I really do hate to sort of keep that one foot in the past here, but it is relevant, I appreciate. But if you've identified a media outlet or publisher that you want to be in,
Yep.
you think that that's your target market, or that's the media audience or media outlet that you need to be in, you'll be following a journalist. Follow them on Twitter as well, follow them on LinkedIn, or follow them on SlideShare, wherever they also are active, and complement them as
Let's
well.
go back a step. I just want to go back a step because the poor business owner out there is still saying, well, I'm following a journo, but who's the journo? So, one of the things, and you mentioned it earlier, is you get onto Google, and the very first thing you do on Google is you type in your own name or your company name, and you start to look at what's out there already, or what confusion there is in the marketplace because someone else has your name. There's a thing called Google Alerts. Is that the product? And I don't think most people understand the importance or the power of Google Alerts. So Google Alerts allows you to put in a search term, and Google will send you links and stories related to that search term as soon as they hit Google.
Yeah.
So if we use Google Alerts, the first thing we need to do is put up our own name, our company name, our industry, our competitors' names, our clients' names.
Yep.
So we create this whole string of Google Alerts, and what this does is it allows us to now have a stream of relevant information to who we're trying to service, what our competitors are doing to service them, what people are spot on. Okay. So from that, then we can start to understand who these journos are.
Yeah.
Because those feeds that are coming to us from Google Alerts will now give us access to names of the journos that are publishing information.
It's not look, I know where you're going with this. Definitely, it's still not the only way. Google is a brilliant tool for this very exercise. Google Alerts are set up and been designed exactly for that purpose. But in making whether we're starting out with PR or whether we're trying to make the transition from sort of buying magazines, and I don't want to have to pay $9.95 for that magazine anymore because I'm just not getting any money out of it. It's still a chunk of money out of my pocket each week. I could go online and get the content for a lot cheaper, get an online subscription, whatever it may be. You could still be working out the journalist or journalists that you need to be targeting, but still, there's nothing like picking up the phone to them. Okay. Don't hide behind Google. Don't hide behind the internet. There's nothing like picking up a phone. If anything, it's actually probably reinforced the need and the urgency or the imperative. Pick up the phone and have a conversation.
About what?
Talk to somebody.
So let's do this, right? Because I imagine, like, first thing for me is, okay, you're going to give me the name of a journalist, or I find them in a magazine that my customers read. I ring up this journalist, and what's the conversation look like?
Well, you know at the back of your mind what you're really ultimately wanting to sell or market or promote. Okay, but you don't necessarily float that out straight away.
Right.
What you want to do is say, I've been reading your material lately. I saw your last 4 articles on XYZ, commentary on the state of the mid-sized manufacturing sector in Southeast Melbourne.
Right.
I love what you've been writing. I think there's actually something else going on here as well, and I just wanted to sort of share this with you. Could I send you some material?
It's pretty simple then.
Yeah, it's relations, it's relationships, it's relationship building, and the media relations in old or new world, that's still what it entails. It's a relationship building. You have to have that relationship.
So it's that old acronym WIIFM. What's in it for me?
Yeah.
And that journalist has needs.
Yes.
And when you ring up and say, I've been reading your articles and I'm interested in what you've said in this area, and I have something that I think is of interest to you, we have a relationship.
You do. But you'll be going there knowing that your end target audience is not the journalist or the trade title or the media title. It is still your audience behind, their readership behind. Now, what's in it for me is what story can they use?
Right.
What story is new? What's the new angle to this issue? This current affair, this topic. Fantastic. What's the new product? Am I the journalist? Are you telling me this for the first time? Is this exclusive? Can I run this exclusively? Can you begin to build something off one of the most abused words in the English
dictionary. So generally speaking, would you say these journalists are open to these sorts of discussions, or difficult to
Look,
catch?
it's difficult because certainly in Australia, but overseas as well, we will have you will have noticed the rationalisation in the media sector.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of journalists have been laid off over the last sort of 7 or 8 years. Every 2 or 3 years, the big publishers, the main news publishers, have laid off a lot of journalism,
right,
reporters and production staff behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
There are still some journalists there, excuse me,
yeah,
but they're dying breed. Not necessarily. There are still journalists there, but they're actually adapting themselves. They're getting more online. They're getting more of their story leads from social media,
mm-hmm.
and they're getting more of their story leads online. Let's take a typical company that may have instigated a content marketing or brand journalism operation within their business. And I don't want to throw another new sort of term out there yet without too much explanation, because it'd be a bit too big of a chunk to bite off. But what you're doing in setting up that content marketing operation
mm-hmm.
is developing content and publishing it yourself on your website, your blog, your social channels, and so on and so forth. And you're then raising the flag, your own flagpole, to say, yeah, we're over here, and we've got this, and we're saying this, we've got lots of content here, and all our users are downloading our ebooks and our how-to articles, and our great subscription. The journalists will take note. They will find you. Okay. You probably still need to do some sort of outward pitching from time to time.
Yep.
But what, if anything, PR, and to be honest, made a lot of journalists pretty lazy. I'm going to put it out there. Press releases, ad infinitum, every day. I used to have to wade. In my last job before I jumped into PR, I'd be wading through a couple of hundred press releases every day in the inbox.
Yeah.
It would just be delete, 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 delete.
Yeah.
Now journalists are having to sort of get back out there and go looking for the story again. So in some respects, that's a good move.
Okay.
What's happened is you're establishing your digital domain. You're publishing your own content. You're managing your own sort of marketing message on your own digital domain, your owned media.
Right.
You can still go and get some earned media over there by pitching stuff to the journalists, and or when they find you and or pick up the phone to you.
Right.
You start a conversation. You build a rapport, you build a relationship, and then you start to give them something.
Yep. Okay. So really, it's interesting because you're coming back to this point of having your own media, which would scare a lot of people in business. I don't want to run a magazine. I don't want to run.
Well, here's why it has been scary, because again, there's just been an absolute explosion. You referenced before how you could count almost on two hands the number of media outlets that we used to pitch to.
That's right.
3 or 4 TV channels, a couple of metro radio stations, and a handful of small, print titles. That has just gone splat. The digital landscape has just gone horizontal.
Right.
There are just untold numbers of media outlets.
Yep.
Infinite digital column, pixel inches, if you like, out there. How do you possibly work out where to go, where to start, what to do, who to talk to? It is a lot. Yep. But start with one. Just start with one. You'll know, you'll read, you'll consume some media yourself. Is that something that you want to be in?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it the Australian Financial Review?
Yeah.
Is it Australian? Is it the business section of the Herald Sun? Or is it the Financial Standard or Business Spectator? Is it crikey? Have you actually got something quite contentious, maybe pseudo-political commentary on sort of an economic commentary or retail commentary that has a sort of a pseudo-political bent to it that could be written in such a way, or you are known or have such a brand or a pitch that may fit that media title?
Okay.
And it is, again, crikey is quite satirical, In the UK, it was Private Eyes. Here, it was probably, I don't know, give me an Australian satirical sort of media outlet.
Oh, geez, that's a good question.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I suppose the message I'm getting through this conversation is that there is so much media available for people right now. And
don't try and conquer it all.
And so the job is really not about finding the right media. It's about finding the right content, message, and market, and coming up with an interesting spin.
And getting a clear plan together, getting a clear vision for what you want to achieve, getting a clear objective. So you want to, and we go back to, say, just that one audience of home-based mums that are running home-based businesses. Maybe they're turning out cupcakes. Maybe they're running a DIY stationery design company from the kitchen bench. Is that your target market? Work out what it is. Work out who they are, where they hang out, what do they read, what do they respond to, what kind of content do they like, and then start to put the feelers out. Start to pitch them a press release or a. And in saying press release as well, really, the new media is also the blogosphere. There are professional bloggers out there. There are professional blogging agencies that have stables of bloggers. So where 10, 15, 20 years ago, you'd be sending a pitch letter with your media release to a very specific journalist saying, dear so-and-so, I like your commentary on. I just have this information for you on XYZ. We have just done this. It's a new story. Today, you'd be pitching the same sort of thing to bloggers. Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just about your own blog and writing your own blog, but it is pitching to this new media.
Yeah.
It is, I'll grant you easily, it's a very busy space out there. But it is important to go back to that first step of establishing objectives and then working out who exactly you're talking to. As you said before, everybody likes to sort of read an opinion, but everybody's got an opinion to share.
Yeah.
We're coming back to the sort of smaller idea of just building just the community of people you want around your brand.
Right.
And there are a lot of trends and strategies and ideas. Again, content marketing is one. Newsjacking is another. Again, you mentioned that before. That's briefly where you'll.
Well, let's talk about that one, because that is an interesting area where we can just start creating content, and the problem I've seen with a lot of content, it's generic, it's boring, it's repetitive, it's just regurgitated stuff. Yeah. So let's say I'm a healthcare professional. I might be in natural therapy. I can tell you the natural therapy is better, and I can tell you that this, and I can give you all of the basic content. But it starts to become a bit rote and repetitive, doesn't it?
Yes.
So it's not an interesting story anymore. I could tell you about people who have sort of succeeded in curing their ailments. Newsjacking. So what's that about?
Okay, in the simplest sense, it's that reactionary piece, capitalizing on an event, a topic, a news, current affair that's happening that day. And if we say take what's happening in the manufacturing sector right now,
yes,
the media, the mainstream media broadly talks about that high-level manufacturing. So when a Holden or a Toyota or a Ford or a Qantas or somebody lays off 2,000 people or offshores 2,000, 5,000 jobs, they think that that's all the manufacturing is. You talk to the small and medium-sized manufacturers in places like Kingston or Braeside or further south, Carrum Downs, and they'll be saying, as far as we're concerned, our manufacturing sector at our level is thriving. We've got a lot going on here. We could have told you 20 years ago what was going to happen, what Ford were going to say.
Yeah.
And we started adapting then. We started tailoring our products more towards the aviation industry or to servicing gas fitters, depending on what the part is. So they were innovating a long time ago. They want to tell that story. Not just the story of their business, but they want to stand up and say, we're here to defend the manufacturing. So in a newsjacking sense, let's say, today there was the announcement about the Alcoa aluminium smelter down to Geelong way.
Geelong, yep.
Another 1,000 jobs between sort of the primary closure, but also the flow-on effect as well, the extra jobs that will go into that.
Yep.
And this has been practiced for a few years, but the savvy brands and businesses and commentators out there would, as soon as they heard the story for the first time on the 6 a.m. news bulletin on the radio or ABC Breakfast, whatever they watch, that they could pull together with a media release template, a short 3 or 4 statement. Commentator XYZ said this, business, we believe this has happened, but there's more to it than meets the eye. To interview David Guest, please contact telephone number and email and website, and pitch it out there to your media list, your media list that you will have developed by then, your own custom media list, or quickly get on the phone to an established paid-for service like AAP MediaNet.
Right.
Disclaimer: I don't have anything to do with any of these names,
okay.
So I'm not promoting, not benefiting from that. But a service like that could distribute your media release like that. And you could, for $150, $200, depending on the actual number of media outlets you asked for your media release to be distributed to, you could be hitting all the mainstream metro news press between print, radio, television, and digital, and trade in metro and other areas.
So it's pretty powerful, because really when news hits like that, I suppose everyone's interested in that story now. And there's all this fear about what's happening in manufacture in Australia. And if anyone can spin a story that actually shows a opportunity out of that, or shows the flow-on effect, or an insight that other people aren't seeing, then the media are hungry for that.
If you've got something new, if you've got a new angle on it, the media want stuff that's new. They want new ideas, they want new stories, they want new headlines, and not just new, the more contentious, the more controversial.
Right.
If there's some conflict in there, the top 2 or 3 ingredients that journalists look out for are new, conflict, human.
Right.
Has to be new.
Yes.
Otherwise they really don't care, won't get looking.
Yes.
Is it contentious? Is there something that's going to be quite impactful or controversial? Or have you got a very controversial point of view?
Excellent.
And then also the human emotion, the human element.
Okay.
So, really, people make stories.
Yeah, so it's very interesting, I suppose, really. That's what the news is all about, is finding something that sort of grabs a heartstring, is actually against the trend, so not what everyone else is saying. And so we can actually then hijack these stories and get some good PR for our company, even though it's not a direct relationship.
And we're for the most part, the last 20 minutes or so, we've still just been talking about that earned media approach, trying to get that third-party journalist, pitching something out to them, risking your message or your product to what could be a skeptical or cynical third party. Okay. Whereas today, the contrasting opportunity is controlling your own message.
Right. So
in more detail.
So let's start summarising, because I know we're getting towards the end of this call, and it sounds like we go on for the rest of the day about all these opportunities. But in a nutshell, the small business owner looking at PR, what are the key things they need to be doing? We've obviously established they need to identify their target market first. They need to identify the channels that they can contact those. Now you just mentioned that there's two opportunities. One is to go for earned media, what you call earned media, which is really getting into someone else's media, so getting into the press. And then the other one is controlling your own media, which is much more accessible now than it ever used to be. Is there anything else that we need to sort of add to that, Nick?
Keep it simple. Again, that's less is more. You don't have to go and put something out every day just because you have an opinion on every manufacturing story or statement that's put out by the media or by government. You may not get a look in. Right. But choose your times carefully. Cherry pick your opportunities, cherry pick your moments. Keep it simple. Just put one thing out there. Just try and open a line of communication in the short term. It may take a few goes, a few months, a few phone calls and email pitches to a journalist, a bit of everything to get there. In the meantime, you could be putting some of your thoughts on your blog post. Right. And sure, with blogging, if you're just starting out blogging, you start with 0 readers until you loop in mum and dad, your brother, aunties and uncles, and start developing.
So you get 6 readers.
You get 6 readers. You need to still build up a bit of the habit of developing some content. Okay. And again, content as well. Alluded to earlier, there's creation versus curation. Yes. Now, a good way for small businesses to start, knowing that creating their own original content sounds like just too much to bite off. It is. It can be. Definitely no two ways about it. We're all time poor. But curate it. So it could be for the first year or so, you're just actually sharing, and a lot of people do this. People do share news articles from all sorts of titles, all sorts of media websites out there, but build up.
I like this idea of curation because it's the lazy man's approach, right? And
it's lazy, but I disagree to some extent. You are sharing somebody else's content at that time. You are actually, in effect, promoting or certainly sharing somebody else's thought leadership material. Yep. Yes, but if it's aligned with your brand, if it's something you want to get into a bit more, if it's talking to the same sort of audience, and or let's say it's an American commentator on retail, you want to share it with your own audience, and your audience has not heard about this American retail commentator, but it's relevant for them. At that moment in time, you're the host of that bit of content. Right. It's not your content. Yep. It will be credited with David Blinkenstein in New York. Yep. But for that moment in time, your readers are getting it on your LinkedIn profile or seeing it from your website. Yeah.
So I suppose from a helicopter view, you're out there reading all the content that you think could be relevant. Yep. And if you see something that is relevant, you just make sure that you share it with your community.
Yeah. Don't share cat photos every day and silly dog memes and all that stuff unless it is part of your brand, unless it's part of who you are and who you're known for, and you are a funny, engaging, you do like sharing this stuff and people know you for it and trust you for it, that it's going to be safe enough content. Yeah. But really, if you are trying to build a specific brand or profile and build that little bit of PR work, you need to be cherry picking your content. And again, that doesn't need you to be on LinkedIn or your social profiles or your website and your blog every hour of every day. Right. Just once a day. Just build it up bit by bit. Okay. But start small. Have a simple content calendar, one piece of content a month, curated or created. You want to curate a bit more frequently than once a month. Yeah. To build a year.
So the point you're making is you need to be committed to generating content on a regular basis. Yeah. You need to be committed to making sure that content is relevant to the people you're trying to attract. And it needs to be an ongoing sort of building process over a period of time. Now, during that time, you can find media outlets to earn media, but at the same time, you're building your own media, so they might be attracted to you because of that.
Yeah, and when you have a website that and or a blog site built tacked onto the side, and it's got 6 months or a couple of years worth of articles regularly, in the archive section, or however it's categorized. Yeah. There's a body of content there. There's a body of work, your body of work there. And there'll be some stuff you can also be repurposing. So take a blog post or a story or a press release that you put on 2 years ago, is it actually still relevant today? Can it just be updated and customized and repurposed?
Right.
Bit of a time-saving, labor-saving device. It takes 5 minutes rather than the 3 hours it originally took you.
Okay.
Customize it that way.
Fantastic. Look, I'm very conscious of time, and we've just hit sort of the end of the call. Look, as a follow-up, obviously some people out there are still interested in finding out a bit more about how you could potentially help them or what they need to do as a next step. Do you offer any kind of service for the small business owner in this area?
Yes, very much so. In fact, small business and the entrepreneur, what I call the emerging entrepreneur economy.
Yes.
Because that's the way the world's moving right now, so you believe in Australia at least. But I work with small businesses to kickstart their PR in a way that actually helps them to establish their own DIY public relations operation. And it doesn't have to be onerous. Again, there's, even if you have the time to write one press release a day or one blog post a day, your audience is probably too time poor to read it all anyway. So again, that really reinforces the point to just keep it, cherry pick your moments and your content to sort of produce. But I'll work with businesses to get them started.
So how do they get onto your blog?
So they can find me by newmediaevangelist.com.
Excellent.
Or you may have seen the blue lectern logo before. The other side to my the other hat that I wear is presentation skills and public speaking training, which syncs in with the sort of the personal PR branding sort of imperative today.
Yes.
So I work with you on what to say and how to say it.
Excellent.
But you can also find me at simon@confidencetricks.com.au.
Fantastic.
New Media Evangelist is where it's at.
I'll make sure that the follow-up email to the webinar today, everyone will get your contact details if they have any further questions or inquiries. If they're looking for a PR template, I'm sure you can help them with all those sorts of things as well.
And please find me on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. I'd love to connect with people on those particular channels. They are very relevant for me, at least.
Yes.
But I follow the specific journalists that I need to follow or that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Closing comment, my Twitter feed, for example, is actually not just a place where I post my cat pictures or I don't have a cat, or post silly jokes of the day.
Yeah.
I actually set it up as a bit of a news feed. So I've cherry picked the news titles that I want to share with me, their headlines of the day.
Fantastic.
I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn as well.
Wonderful. All right, Simon. Well, thank you very much for your time today. It's been very interesting. We've talked about a lot of areas.
Thanks for the chat.
And thanks for you guys for listening, and we'll catch up with you next time.
Cheers.